Yes, they are. Look behind you. My God, why waste money on a pantomime when you can watch what's going on with the political classes at every level? It is unseemly, and yet it is the biggest comedy act that I've seen since Jack and the Beanstalk, Cinderella, or any other pantomime. My God, what has this country, and for that matter the world, come to? We have armies at the gates, and all that can happen is the blame game goes around Westminster and trickles down into the provinces. I really, really do give up. A plague on all their houses. For God's sake, will you please start looking after things? Because it is like people like me. It's the average citizen that is suffering and is going to suffer more and more and more. Stop this pantomime. And also stop some of the media. I've always defended the media because I'm part of it. But stop the national media feeding it with childish comments and childish debate, which I had to suffer watching this morning, trying hard to find at least a nugget of news. Good morning. We're on late this morning. It's 8:15, is it? Let's. Well, we can't check the. Yes, we can. It's 8:14. In fact, not 8:15. 8:14. Let's be absolutely accurate. On Tuesday, the 8th of February, and whether this is going to be a day to remember, I have no idea. But it is certainly a day in which we see the unseemly antics of all political parties, of all politicians at every level, as they chase around trying to justify how they've brought the country to this bloody mess that it's in. And it is in a mess. An absolute mess. And is anybody addressing it? They won't even accept that it's in a mess. All they do is peacock strutting, saying, look what we've achieved. Well, the fact is, you have achieved nothing. In fact, you've turned us backwards. And it's not just what you've done lately, it's what you've been doing over the last 5 years. All you do is you point the finger now. Whose fault is it that we've got an energy crisis? Well, it is the politicians' fault, at all levels and at all parties. It started 2015, in the main. But is anybody accepting the blame? No, no, no. They're all busy pointing fingers. We have mobs on the streets. Oh, it's Boris's fault. My God, can the man be any, can he be the reason for any other things that are going in our society? But it's very fashionable at the moment to point the finger. We have no law and order on the streets. We have a head of the Met who should have resigned a long time ago and refuses to do so, after increasing the crime rate to unacceptable levels in London, in the metropolitan areas, and seeing crimes start to climb in our own backyard. Who's to blame? It's the bloody politicians, all of them. So I point the finger, not at anyone, but at all of them, and say, get your act together. Get your act together. Get your act together. Well, okay. Let's have a look at, first of all, so, what are the newspapers reflecting in this total and utter mess that we're in? Well, the Express, the Daily Express, which is very sympathetic to the government always, is Boris. Rishi is loyal and we're united on problems. and apparently the Prime Minister is trying to gather some strength from those people who are loyal to him, and he's trying to buy some time before Parliament takes a break, so that he doesn't get a vote of no confidence and he can start to put his premiership back together again. I don't think that he should have to put his premiership back together again. It is a bloody awful disaster. But the fact is there are too many things that need addressing, and it is not a change of government. It is not a change of government. You know, I sometimes think I'm a voice in the wilderness. I go out onto the streets and I sometimes meet friends who sit there and say, "Oh God, Keith, you had to go this morning." But you know, they're nice people. And that's the trouble. We're surrounded now by nice people who want to think the best of our leaders when in fact we have got the worst crop that we ever have got. But we are faced with a high inflation rate, high cost of living, increase in taxes all the way around, a council that is fleeing our town. As if it didn't flee some time ago. Most decisions now are made in Eastbourne, not in Lewes. So why on earth we were moving to a council in Newhaven, and I have a lot of sympathy for Newhaven, but even the people in Newhaven are saying, for God's sake, why are you coming down here? What we need is investment. We need money, we need jobs. But anyway, that's another argument which we'll get onto in a minute. But we've got the Russians at the gates, and we've got the Chinese who, because of the state of world affairs and because of the economy, which is under threat because of what we're doing, is talking to the Russians. My God, threats all the way around. And what can we do? Still concentrate on a bloody ice cake. Or whether, in fact, the Prime Minister incited a riot the other day. Incite a riot, or perhaps he did say one or two things that might be considered indiscreet. But that created a riot? No, sir, it did not. No, ma'am, it did not. What created the riot is the fact that law and order has been on the decrease ever since we started to come out of the pandemic. And actually, it started increasing during the pandemic because we abandoned all principles. And we all held out our hands. Well, I held out mine, didn't get much in it, but nonetheless, we all held out our hands. The government should help. There should be money coming. And it became free, easy money, on top of the free, easy money that the economy had provided us prior to this pandemic. And now that the crunch is coming, now that we're all having to pay for it, the unsettled society that we have is just coming home to roost. That's where it is. Now, it's not just the politicians, although the politicians should be addressing things like this. The banks. You can't see a bank manager anymore. You can see a very nice person. They're very pleasant. They take you into an office and they help you find a website. Because with that website, what you've got to do is you've got to talk to a computer to see whether you can get an overdraft or a loan or whatever. You don't talk to a bank manager anymore. And if you're in the villages, you can't even get to a local bank or a local branch. In many instances, you can't even get to a bloody post office. And what's that doing? It's fracturing society. Our society is being fractured by all these things. And as for the credit card companies, they are a disgrace in the main. One or two try to behave decently. I'm not going to name the one that I dealt with yesterday because they were very, very decent people. But there are several, and there's one that I do name regularly, American Express, that behave in a disgraceful manner. And why? Because they've got a chief executive who believes in globalization. Globalization is, it was the wonderful experience that we were going to have that was going to make everybody rich, free markets and so on. And what did it do? It created the rich and the poor. And even the grand folk at Davos, the World Economic Forum, are now beginning to realize that globalization is a busted flush. It does not work. But what have we done? We've followed globalization. The NHS is, in a mini way, trying to globalize. So we don't see a doctor anymore. We try to deal through a computer. Well, this is pure BS. It has got to stop. And there are a good many other things that we are trying to do. local governance by computer. Everything is done by computer. Well, the bloody computers are taking over, but a computer has no conscience. And I'm beginning to think that councillors and MPs and PMs and diplomats, they don't have a conscience either. So perhaps replacing them with computers totally is the way to go. No, it's not. Let us get back some humanity into our society. Let us start caring about our neighbour. Oh, a lot of the liberal, and I say that with a little L, not a big L. A lot of the liberal people say, oh, we look after it. Look at the food bank that we did the other day. Wonderful. But I can't find anybody involved in the food banks who tell me why we need them. Nobody is trying to go to the root. Why do we need food banks? Answer me. Give me the question. That's a decent question. Why do we need food banks? Why? Because our politicians have got it screwed up. That's why. And they continue to do it. We have got such a poor level of quality of politician from top to bottom. Yes, there are lots of decent people. And I had a conversation the other day with somebody who it was actually asked on the doorstep about a local candidate. And when questioned, I won't say which party it was, which question, the person on the doorstep who was trying to peddle the political candidate was asked to give a reason why and said, well, she is a very nice person. That is no reason to elect anybody to office. We want people who are capable. What we've got is probably a whole host of very nice people, although I doubt it. The one thing I do get the feeling, and my own personal experience, is that they don't know their arse from their elbow. And that's not the sort of society I want being led. Root and branch reform. Reform, there's that word again. A politician shrivels from the word reform. And that comes from some politicians. Oh, dearie, dearie me. A license to clean up the web. That's the Daily Mail. Well, yes, okay, that's fine. But I want this legislation gone through with a fine-tooth comb by Parliament. And I doubt if it's in a fit state to do anything at the moment, because it's still trying hard to point the finger about iced cakes and whether you stirred up a mob or who said what to whom. Let's point the finger. It's a pantomime. It's an absolute pantomime. Because this piece of legislation could take all sorts of things away. Yes, it may clean up the web. But if it goes far enough, it could stop, for instance, programs like this. It could stop us criticising our leaders, criticising society. Okay, you may say, thank God, get rid of a loudmouth like Hayes. All right, get rid of me. I don't care. It doesn't. That's fine on a personal level, but to get rid of the right to shout and yell and criticise cannot be taken away. And if this legislation is threatening to do that, it needs looking at. And I personally am now beginning to fear for our community. It is interesting, isn't it? Because I've spoken in one gentleman that I deal with regularly, and I like enormously and I respect enormously, but we had a slight difference of opinion about Canada the other day. And he said, oh yeah, well, my relatives, he's got relatives over there, and so have I, my relatives are saying that the truckers in Ottawa are just a small group and they shouldn't pay any attention to them. They're just troublemakers and so on and so forth, and the Truckers Association isn't having anything to do with it. My relatives are telling me that this is really widespread, that the fear of government dominance and the cut down of freedom is really true in Canada. And actually, one recent returnee from Canada has shown me how the media has been bought by the government and by subsidies and funds so that it doesn't dare speak out. And that this so-called truckers' revolt, or whatever it's called, is really deep-seated. And I can quite believe that, because the Liberals in Canada, headed by Trudeau, have always been a panic-stricken group. It's not known widely because it was never broadcast that much, but for 24 hours in my day there, in the 1960s, Canada was under martial law because the Prime Minister at the time, the name of Trudeau, how funny, father of the present Prime Minister, panicked and called martial law because of a kidnapping which the pundits said was from the Fédération Libération de Québec, a terrorist group, which turned out to be nothing more than a puff of wind. Well, the Canadians are worried about these things, and it's about time that we should be too. I'm not saying that these things aren't viable in terms of trying to keep us with a decent, civilized society, but nobody is questioning them. It's just like locally, as far as I can see, is the scrutiny committee never scrutinises. And that's what it's there for, to scrutinise the executive, the people in Bournemouth that now run Lewis. All right, now we've... right, okay, the Daily Mirror, waiting shame. And I've managed to bugger that up, haven't I? Okay, what does it say? The waiting shame. 6 million in a queue, but it'll get worse as Tories delay health recovery plan. Right? Okay. Can I get back to... yes, here we are. The Times. Britain will not flinch over the Ukraine, says the PM. Well, at long last. Was that the Telegraph, was it? Yeah. No, the Times. At long last, somebody is beginning to realise that the enemy is at the gates and that we better do something about it. And as I can see, is the only military activity that we've got going, apart from sending a few troops, is that we've gone back to prosecuting a 90-year-old general for what happened in Northern Ireland. You know, it is remarkable that the people that keep stirring these prosecutions are people that didn't live in Northern Ireland under that regime. I was there from 1975 to 1990. All the days of the Troubles. You want to know what it was like? I could fill your ear for an hour and a half. Yes, there were huge, disgraceful situations on both sides. But on both sides. But it's now fashionable just to have a go at the army. And 30 years after the event, 35 years, 40 years after the event, well, I was there and I can tell you the tension under which we lived. I smoked 80 cigarettes a day, and God only knows how much I drank. And those people, very nice people around me, did the same thing. At a dinner party, there was never a cigarette that wasn't lit on the table. There was never a glass that was empty. The pubs were always full. And on a Sunday, before they were allowed to open on the Sunday, you went in through the back door. The tension was enormous. You really didn't know whether you were going to walk into a bomb, a terrorist. And believe me, I was ordered off the Shankill by one terrorist, and he was a loyalist, not the IRA. I didn't quite fill my pants, but I felt like it. It is terrifying. And here we are deciding on who did what. What a bunch of prima donnas and do-gooders and, oh, look at how dreadful it was years ago. Yes, and slavery. Let's pull down the statues. That solves the issue. No, it doesn't. We have got lots of things wrong in our society at the moment, and it's going wrong because we haven't got the leadership. And does anybody care? No, because it's easier to stick your bloody pants to a roadside with super glue. Idiots. Right, the Sun. Prem stars a vile attack on the cat. Oh dear. Well, I mean, cruelty to animals is a dreadful, dreadful thing, of course, and it does say something about the people that do it. But for a front page, there is a Premier League footballer who actually kicked his cat, and it's become a cause célèbre. So the Sun is going after it. Abusive protesters target Starmer with the Savills. Well, all this upset the other day is all, which is eight days after Boris supposedly, well, he did. He blamed Keir Starmer for not prosecuting Jimmy Savile. That really makes me want to go out into the streets and thump the first person that I can see, the first politician. No, it doesn't. Of course it doesn't. And how facile that our society can start to use that to justify mob rule. Mob rule is there because we are losing law and order. We are losing rule of law. We are losing control of the streets. And it's getting worse and worse as we walk up and down to see and hear about attacks on individuals in our small town and many small towns. And God only knows how many in the cities. Oh, dearie, dearie, dearie me. Dearie, dearie, dearie me. The Daily Telegraph. North Sea oil fired up amid net zero row. Right, let's look at the energy situation. Because once again we can go back to politicians who didn't know their A from their B. The A from their B, the A from their E. This goes back to when we decided on zero emissions. Very worthy. But nobody bothered to question whether in fact we could do it without cost. And now what are we doing is today, or at least it's going to be fast-tracked this week, 3 oil fields will be opened up in the North Sea after we closed everything down so we could meet our emissions target. And even then we weren't going to meet it. And in the meantime, what's happening is we, the public, are paying for it in higher energy prices because we've had to buy from abroad. Where's the sense in all this? Now, a lot of people will say, Keith, okay, you're emotional. And a lot of what you're saying doesn't have logic. It may not have logic, but the fact of the matter is these are facts that I'm mentioning, and they should be being debated. And they should be being debated by our local politicians as well as our national ones. And what are we doing? Worrying about iced cake in lockdown. Give me strength. Give me strength. Metro. Kate's book at bedtime. Well, it's got something about a television program or a book or something that the princess, is she a princess? Yes. The Duchess of Cambridge has written. But underneath, Keir flees hate mob. Which paper is that again? Oh, that's the Metro. That's the London paper. Okay. They were a hate mob. But were they whipped up by the Prime Ministers? No, I doubt it. What we've got is hate mobs for all sorts of reasons. And mostly it's because we don't have law and order. And until somebody starts to decide that they've got to look at it, and that if, whatever else, it's an old cry. We have no coppers on the beat. Yes, is the answer. But cybercrime is so horrific that we've got to have a whole unit looking at it. Well, why don't we have both? Why can't we have a cybercrime unit doing what it's doing and go back to people on the beat instead of if you're walking along a Lewis Street and you get thumped, you have to wait for a policeman to come from Eastbourne. And if you want to complain to the local police station, it takes you 10 minutes to get through the front door with pushing this buzzer and that buzzer, just the same as the post office. Well, not the one in W.H. Smith, that seems to work all right, but the other one down near Tesco, near Tesco, is you don't know when that's open. So if you've got a parcel, you had it. Right, okay, the Financial Times. The ECB rate expectation force up Greek and Italian borrowing costs. Well, it's really, you may think that that's got nothing to do with us, but it does, because it's all about interest rates. Interest rates having to rise to combat a sharp rise in inflation, which is now forecast to reach perhaps 7.5%. Let's hope that the forecasters at the Bank of England and in the city are wrong. Because otherwise, rightly, critics are saying, is some people are going to be put out of living because they won't be able to afford all the things because of the new higher prices, because the economy has now started to go out of control. And those who received all those handouts, lick your lips. and you enjoy your handout, but don't start complaining now that somebody has to pay it back. We knew at the time, and it was lip service. Oh yes, somebody's going to have to pay it back. Well, it's us, and it looks as if it's going to have dire consequences on our community. Okay, well, those are mostly the newspapers. Those are mostly the newspapers. Let's. Why don't we just actually take? Oh no, let's take just a moment because I need to have a food item on, right? I need to have a food item, and this is my rediscovery of a delicacy that I had as a child, shortly after the war. I can't say during the war because I can't remember what the hell I ate during the war. I was too young, but this delicacy, and it went out of favour. And it still hasn't really come in amongst people who want all sorts of weird and wonderful things on their toast. But it's as good as it ever was. Okay, let's give me even more time now. Now, it's very interesting because I tried very hard to find a sensible way of looking at what the latest news was in Lewes and East Sussex this morning. And actually, on the web, as far as I can see, there is none. It is because they are so desperate to make money out of the web. Almost all the newspapers is what you find is how to buy a house, how to buy an extended thing that will make your chest bigger or whatever. And to get through to the news is very, very difficult. However, the key thing is, and it's started to appear on social media, and thank God it has, and quite clearly on social media, is that there is a hardship fund is going to help Lewes district residents cope with the cost of living crisis. And the Lewes council leaders announced the plans to create a special hardship fund to help residents cope with the cost of living crisis. Well, at least they're doing something, I suppose, but that's to cover the fact. What they're saying is, and what we're doing is we're going to get some money because we're abandoning the Southover House, right? Southover House, pretty much at the centre of Lewes. Where are they going? New Haven. Now, I have been a booster of New Haven in the last a couple of months or so. I think that it's a town that demands regeneration. I had to spend 3 months there during the summer, and I got, despite the fact that it's an ugly little beast, I got to quite like it and found some really nuggets. And I think that we should look after that town and do our best for it. I don't agree with what the politicians are doing, but then I'm not agreeing with anything this morning, am I? I'm really in a very nasty frame of mind. I'm having a go at everybody, and why not? But this, the fact is that they are now going to get a couple of 100,000 from renting out Southover to an arts organisation. On the surface, so people say, "Well, what a good idea! We can get the fund." Now there are three things at issue here, and I'll remember two of them. First of all, bit by bit, Lewes's self-governance, which was so important 100 years ago, and 300 years ago, and 500 years ago, so important because we were an important place, has slowly been eroded so we don't have any anymore. We are presently governed from Eastbourne. We have a town council, and I talk regularly to the mayor, who is a very fine man, and who is very self-effacing, and I'm sure that he doesn't really mean it when he says, "What can I do as a mayor? I have no power." What he's given is leadership. He's everywhere. I went into Waitrose on Saturday, and there he was helping with the food banks. And there were lots of people very active down there, but as I say, nobody was asking why we need food banks. But anyway, I'm off the topic. Our local district government is going to move out of Lewes. Now, the Lewes society, the fabric, has been fractured enough with us going to Eastbourne. First of all, if you phone, you only get somebody from Eastbourne. And if you say, this is on School Hill, 9 times out of 10 the reply is, I don't know, Lewes, explain to me where it is. It's only the main street. Young Turk. It's only the main street. And that's where we've got to. And now the district council is abandoning. The James McCleary did a little video the other day pointing out what a fine building it was and that all that space was empty. Why is it empty? Because we spilled everybody into Eastbourne. That's why. We went into there because we couldn't find enough room in Lewes House halfway down School Hill. And how has it been emptied? I went down there 2 or 3 times to talk about council tax. And they looked and shuffled. There's a receptionist there. Nice lady. Actually, I think there's a chap there. Nice chap. But they shuffled and looked at their shoes and sort of said, well, there's nobody in this building that can look after council tax. Why not? Why not? Oh, because what it does is it empties it up so we can rent it out and we can all move down to New Haven. I notice in the social media, New Haven social media pages, how outraged some people are. And they believe that it is because there is money being stuffed into pockets. I have no evidence that the local council is corrupt, either at the executive level or the political level, none whatsoever. But there's obviously some feeling in the community that it might be. And if I was them, I would be doing my best to mount a PR campaign to say, no, we are doing our best, and this is the reason why. A little video saying, here's this wonderful space that we can rent, so we can get a hardship fund, is no reason at all. Right? The proposals include plans to increase council tax by £5 a year. We knew we'd get around to that. Somebody's got to pay for it. So £5 onto the council tax, which goes up year after year after year. Now, you say, why do you have a television station like Mirador, which clings on, right? Nobody pays much attention to it. Nobody cares. Well, the Harvard University Review, which went through the United States and through the United Kingdom to look at the shrinkage of local media, pointed out that where local media disappears from a community, first of all, the local governance starts to behave in an arrogant way. Secondly, its efficiency starts to disappear. And thirdly, council taxes, in other words, the finances and the penalties that you pay, start to go up. Oh, does that sound familiar? Yeah. And what's happened? Right? We have no Sussex Express here anymore. We have no BBC. We have no ITV. We have nobody. Yes, they cover it. But there is no John Eccles, who lately passed away, who knew every nook and cranny, knew every councillor. Whenever I've been to a council meeting, is these new lot who were so vocal when they were sitting in the public gallery just passed me off. Oh, who are you? Nonsense. What rubbish. I've taught right across Eastern Europe the tricks that councils and governors get up to try to dismiss the media. Don't pull them on me. I recognise them straight away. I'm just not going to fight you. I'm just going to have a go at you. You are incompetent and you're lacking in any sense of how to communicate with your the people you're supposed to serve. I'm getting so excited I'm forgetting words. It's part of the age, they say. Anyway, right. Now, some of this money is then coming from the rent of the premises they're going to abandon. So if you've got a problem, you can't go down to Southover anymore. You've got to go to New Haven if you want to do it in person. And the chances are, when you get to New Haven, you'll find that you'll be referred to Eastbourne. Well, but we do a lot of things online, they say. Has anybody looked at the statistics? the 100,000 people in Lewis District, there is 50% that are over 45. Most of them over 50. Just look back to when we first started to use the computer for social means. It was 1993. And that's not so very far away. So do your maths. 1993 to 2022. There's a whole generation still. Well, generations. Anybody who's over 40 wasn't brought up with computers. We don't always understand them. But what's the local council do? Oh, you do things online. Stuff you. I don't notice that you're spending huge amounts of money to bring us all in and teach us how to use computers. Oh, it's a little here, a little there, and so on and so forth. It's like a lot of it is, let's look down on people who cannot use a computer. Well, get with it. I am feeling absolutely divorced from my local council, from my national council, from my national governance, and from any in-between. All I see are people pouncing around, and from what I can gather is in the town council, most of the councillors don't even bother to turn up to the meetings. Why do they get elected? Probably just so they can be called councillors. Right. Zoe Nicholson, who is now a Green and is back in charge of the council, she was in charge just after the last election, said the £500,000 fund to be drawn from council reserves, oh gosh, they got reserves, would be intended to act as a support grant for residents hit by rising inflation and energy prices. Have they any idea how these are going through the roof? 7.5% inflation. Price rise is zooming. God only knows how much energy prices are going to, unless some address is made to where we can get alternative energy. Is £500,000 is a drop in the bucket, even locally. Right. Yes, at least she acknowledges that standards of living are going to dip. But there will be some. There will be some, the fat and the sassy. In a globalized society where the rich are rich and the poor are poor, who won't give a damn because they'll have lots of money. And where do they get it? Through the way our society and the way our economy has been run over the last 5, 6, 7 years. Cheap money, cheap labor, cheap everything. It's all disappearing. I've had enough, and you've had enough. I don't even know how long I've been on. Oh, it's 8:50. Right. Let me let me calm down now and tell you that it's going to be another relatively warm day. I think the temperature is between 9 and 12 degrees, which is a little balmy. The breeze is gentle. The chance of rain is there, but it's not really threatening. In fact, I went out at, 5:45 last night, and that was the first drizzle of the day, and even then it was a fine drizzle, and it lasted for all of 5 minutes, as best I can see. So not a bad day to go out in. That is, if you can get out. And if you're out, try hard to enjoy what we have. We have a beautiful, beautiful town. We really do. And that's one of the things that actually makes me feel better. In fact, let me just show you why I calm down. Because I have here what Susan Harris does. She takes photographs first thing in the morning. And they're lovely. They're sometimes moody, but they do show the sort of town that we live in. Let's take a look at that. snappy but lovely pictures of this lovely town, Lewes. I know that when we say we are local, not parochial, and some of the things that we deal with on this program, we have a lot of reaction from abroad. And that's the way it should be, because the issues that face us face millions of people, not only in this country and in towns around Britain, but abroad as well. And that's why I made reference, and heavy reference this morning, to the Canadians and the Canadian situation. They're facing exactly the same, and because it's a big sprawling country, their reaction has been somewhat different to ours. But in the long run, a group brought the capital to a standstill, forced the Prime Minister to flee. Is that what we want? No, we don't. But don't be a pantomime dame, a pantomime character. Oh, yes, you did. Oh, no, you didn't. Oh, yes, you did. The blame game goes on, and it is unseemly, and it's stupid, and it addresses no problems whatsoever. Let's get back on track. Let's acknowledge right through our society we are in trouble. Our society is creaking. I sound like a revolutionary. Nobody is more respectable when it comes to rule of law. In fact, in one social media, there was the usual thing about, because there was a picture of the Queen doing something, is I'm a Republican and I'm proud of it. Well, you shouldn't be, because we have the finest form of government and constitutional monarchy of anywhere in the world. Sometimes the incumbents aren't up to it. Sometimes they are. And we are lucky that we have an incumbent who is up to it, very much up to it at the moment. But the fact is, countries that have presidents get into far more trouble because their head of state is electable and therefore corruptible and can't sustain any sort of a decent policies over a period of time. A constitutional monarchy, the way that we have in this country, flawed though it is the right form of government. It's the right form of governance. The point is, government at any level, in any system, is only as good as the people in it. We have a monarch who keeps a steady helm. Yeah, and that's the one you want to get rid of. The rest are children, put there by isms and ratios and all sorts of things, and have now found that really their capabilities do not match the requirements of a modern society, of a democratic society, and a society that is under threat. Why don't we start to admit we've got a problem and start to look at it properly, instead of the blame game? He had an iced cake, for God's sake. I suppose if I do go out today and I meet somebody in the street, I'm bound to get my nose punched. Quite often happens. And why not? Why not, indeed? All right. I think probably it's time for me to go, isn't it? Let's... yes, I'll say toodle pip. Because it is now... what time is it? It is 8:56. We were a little late on air this morning. In fact, we were almost 15 minutes late on air this morning. Because, as with a lot of things with the internet, try looking up news fast. Almost impossible, particularly local news. You tap into something that says, here is the latest local news, and the first thing that comes up is, will you buy this house? And if so, you can get a mortgage from these people. Not a bit interested in whether, in fact, the news can hit you between the eyes when you need it. Not a bit. But then that's so typical of our society. We do things half measure. We do things in a sloppy way. Yes, I'm an old fart. Oh, yes, I am, and I glory in it. But I would like to think that our society will rebound from many of these setbacks, and they are enormous. It'll rebound. But it won't rebound while our leaders, and for that matter, I'm not talking just about political leadership, but industrial leadership and financial leadership, play the dame in a pantomime Oh, yes, you did. Oh, no, you didn't. Oh, no, you did. No, yes, you didn't. Oh, look behind you. Thank you. I'd like to go to a theatre to watch pantomime, thank you. Not as unseemly as it is on the public stage. Ooh, I've had a good time this morning, but I've meant every word of it. Every last word of it. Toodle pip, toodle bloody pip.